Before we go to Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good afternoon, Venerable Teacher. Good afternoon, Sangha. Okay, we are almost done with the 3rd chapter of the Dhammapada, chapter on the mind, Chittavagga. Today we're going to cover 2 verses, verses 38 and 39, and they go, "He whose mind is not steady, if he does not know the true Dharma, if his peace of mind is troubled, his wisdom will never be perfected. He whose mind is free from the inflow of thoughts and from restlessness, he who has transcended both good and evil, for such a vigilant one there is no fear." I'll repeat that. He whose mind is not steady, if he does not know the true Dharma, if his peace of mind is troubled, his wisdom will never be perfected. He whose mind is free from the inflow of thoughts and from restlessness, he who has transcended both good and evil, for such a vigilant one there is no fear. These verses were given to a young man of good family back in Savatthi. He was a herder, and one day one of his oxes ran away from the herd. And so he went out to the forest looking for this ox all morning. And he finally found the ox, and he put the ox back with the rest of the oxen. And at the time, he was pretty famished. He was hungry. He was thirsty. And the monastery that the Buddha was staying at was nearby at the time. And so he went to the monastery in hopes of receiving some of their leftover alms food, because it was already past midday. So the monks had already went out for alms round and have eaten by this time. So he went to the monastery and he found the monks, bowed at the monks, and waited for them to be free. And then he asked them if they had any food they can eat. And I'm like, yeah, sure, there's the bowl of leftovers, which is where they kind of dump their food. And he was eating this food, and this food was actually pretty good food. He was like, oh my goodness, I work all day and all night, and I get simple rice porridge, but yet these monks are eating this really good food. And so he wondered, what if there was a special occasion or something. And so he went and asked the monks, whose house did you visit to get some of such good food? Who was your benefactor? What was the occasion? It was like, there's no occasion, it's just our typical everyday food. He's like, oh my goodness, this is better than what I get. And so he was like, what's the point of living a life of a layman, of a layperson, working all day and working all night so hard and getting just subpar food, where I could just become a monk and not work and eat good food. So at the end of the day, he went and asked for ordination from the monks, and they accepted him, which I don't know how it happened, because he had a wife at the time, so there's a gap in the story somewhere which I couldn't find. But he stayed at the monastery for a few days. He got very comfortable. He got pretty fat and lazy. But he was also a good worker, right? He was able to help all the senior monks doing their duties, and he, respected and did his own duties. So he was a pretty good monk, and everybody pretty much liked him. But he did get very comfortable and getting slightly fat because of all the food that he was eating. But after a few days, he was discontented, and he was like, this isn't, he saw that that his life at the time was just he wasn't content with it. He was like, well, I'm just going to leave and go back to lay life. And so he went back to lay life. And of course, he went back to working on the farm or on the field or whatever he was doing. And then again, because he wasn't rich or anything, he didn't come from a rich family or anything, but he didn't have the luxurious food that he had at the monastery. So after a few days of being away from such good food, apparently, that he again felt discontented. I was like, I think I'm going to go back and become a monk again. And so he went back to the monastery a few days later and asked for a reordination. So they reordained him. After getting fat and comfortable and lazy, he was like, I'm going to go back to lay life. And so he left and went back to lay life. And he did this continuously 6 times. He ordained 6 times. And then after the 6th time of leaving, he went back home, and at the time his wife was pregnant. And it was in the middle of the night, he walked into the room, and she was laying on the bed all spread out, looking all like a hot mess, right? And she was snoring and drooling, and he was like, ew, what is this? Like, according to the commentary, he was disgusted. Which is not a word I would use, but I don't know what else to use in that. It's a replacement. But he saw the ugliness of the human body, right? And kind of saw through the impermanence of outside beauty. And so he went and grabbed his robes, he tied them around his waist in the knots, right? And as he was leaving, his mother-in-law was also leaving the house with him. And she noticed, he was like, oh, where is he leaving now? He has his robes all tied up, and he's going to go ordain, right? And so the mother-in-law woke up the daughter and like, hey, wake up, your husband's leaving to go get ordained or something. She's like, don't worry about it, he'll be back in a few days, right? As he's been doing for the past 6 times. And so she was nonchalantly about it, which was like, he'll be back. But as he was walking back to the monastery, he kept on repeating to himself how life is impermanent and everything is transitory, right? He was just kind of reflecting. He was doing meditation on repulsiveness of the body, right? Which is one of the meditation methods we've spoken to before. That's one of the important ones in our practice. On the 32 parts of the body. What is it called? Manusakara Sati, something like that. But as he was repeating this little mantra to himself on the way, he actually attained the first level of enlightenment. He became a Srotapatthana, a stream enterer. And so he went back to the monastery and again asked the monks to ordain him. And they're like, yeah, no, it's not happening again. Forget about it. And so, but he kept on repeating, requesting, no, please, like, this is it, like, I promise you. So I'm not going to leave again. And so they were reluctant, but they also knew that he was a pretty good monk anyway. He helped out, he did all his duties and chores and whatnot, so they had some sort of trust in him, but they didn't trust his time management as far as being able to stay as a monk. So reluctantly, they reordained him for the 7th time. And after a few days, because during this process, the monks at the monastery gave him the nickname Chittahata, which means mind-controlled, because he allowed his mind to control his discontentment and his desire to live a monastic life and go back to lay life over and over again. And so after a few days, and Chittahata was still at the monastery, the other monks were kind of teasing him, like, Chittahata, it's already been a few days, like, aren't you ready to go home now? Like, we're just waiting, right? We all have, like, bets on you that you're about to leave. They didn't have bets, but then, because a few days in, he actually attained arhatship, final enlightenment, the 4th level enlightenment. He attained full enlightenment. as an arhat. And so when the monks were saying, oh, Chittahata, like, is it time for you to go? And he recited something about how his past life was just full of attachment, and he recognized the attachment that was leading him to suffering. And now he's left that attachment. He's severed the attachment, and so he's here to stay. And so the monks were like, that's suspicious, because it sounds like he's proclaiming something that he may not have. They didn't believe that he was enlightened, right? Because saying that you've attained enlightenment or a level of enlightenment or some sort of realization you haven't is one of the four major sins as a monastic. And so they went back to the Buddha and told the Buddha, Venerable Sir, there's this monk who proclaims that he's severed his attachments and he's claimed all these things. And the Buddha said, it is so that in his past life, meaning prior to monkhood, that he was full of attachment and he kept on leaving and coming back because of that attachment, right? The reason he kept on leaving is because he had the attachment to his wife, right? So after a few days of not being with her and missing her and all this other stuff, right, he allowed his sensual desires to kind of resurface and take over his mind, which is why he had the nickname Chittahata, mind controlled. He allowed his mind to control him versus him controlling the mind. And so then the Buddha verified that, no, he truly has transcended his attachments and severed those fetters and attained arhatship, full enlightenment. And then he proclaimed these two verses. And again, I'll repeat. He whose mind is not steady, if he does not know the true Dharma, if his peace of mind is troubled, his wisdom will never be perfected. He whose mind is free from the inflow of thoughts and from restlessness, he who has transcended both good and evil, for such a vigilant one, he has no fear. This is actually a pretty famous story, because this is where the precept, or one of the rules and regulations of monasticism, of being able to only ordain up to 7 times comes from. So for monks and nuns, you're able to ordain and leave, right? You're able to disrobe and reordain up to 7 times. And this rule is in place because of Chittahata. But it's also a reflection on the time frame of enlightenment. So if we go back to our discussions on the 10 fetters, for instance, right, the first 3 fetters are eradicated at the first level enlightenment, Sotapadana, right? And then fetters 4 and 5 are weakened at the second level. They are eradicated at the third level, and then the arhatship is eradicating the last 5 fetters. But the timeline from going from Sotapadana, stream enter, from first level to 7th level, is that if you've attained the first level enlightenment of Sotapadana of stream enter, then you are essentially guaranteed no more than 7 more rebirths before you're able to attain the full enlightenment, before becoming an arhat, right? And so we use the term 7 rebirths, which can either literally mean 7 more lifetimes or 7 more phases of life, right? Because you are able to attain full enlightenment in 1 lifetime, as many of these monks do in these stories, right? But you have to apply the Dharma. You have to apply the teachings in order to actually upgrade your enlightenment levels, right? Versus if you just attain the first level, and just kind of hang out and just sit there with it, right, without actually doing any more practice to alleviate yourself or to ascend yourself, then you're going to be stuck. And then you really do have 7 more lifetimes, right? But anyway, the point is we'll see the number 7 quite a bit, right? So there's 7 lifetimes. There are several levels of enlightenment, 7 times that you can ordain. And even 7 is also the number of teachers that you can have in your life. You can have up to 7 teachers, which is again also where this rule comes from, because it's also said that one of the common similarities that some practitioners have or do is temple hop, right? Not bar hopping, but you're temple hopping. So you're going from one practice center to another, you're going from one method to another, kind of back and forth. You're just picking and choosing what you like and what you don't like, right? Which is common in the world. But the Buddha warned us that doing that will actually slow down your practice, will slow down your process, will slow down your ability to achieve and transcend the practices and teachings that you're trying to learn and perfect and attain. And so if you are, I'm going to do the example like my students, for instance, right? I give my students a 5-year curriculum, basically, right? So your first year of practicing, once you've, either before or after you've taken precepts, is all you're doing is practicing or learning and meditating on the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So you're using 1 Noble Truth per month. For the one entire month, all you're doing is reading, you're researching, you're meditating, you're contemplating on the first Noble Truth for 1 month. And the second month you go to the second Noble Truth, and so on and so forth, until you go through all 4 Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. And so that will take the entire year, right? And then on the second year, you do the same thing, but with the 12 links of dependent origination. Paticca Samutpada, 12 links, so 1 link per month, basically. You go through the process there. And then the third year, we go through more deeper meditations and so on and so forth. So there's a progression here, right? And there's a progression because a lot of times when, especially if we're new to Buddhism, and you're new to the Dharma, you're new to the practices, and you're new to anything, Buddhism can be extremely overwhelming. There is a plethora of sutras out there, of discourses, thousands of them, literally tens of thousands of sutras, right? So because we don't have a standard one Bible of a sort, right, there's no one place that you can start at, right? You can literally just do this and pick a discourse and go for it, essentially. But to me, the Dhammapada kind of acts as the Buddhist Bible, because it's not a singular discourse. It is 423 verses that have been put together from hundreds and thousands of different sutras that the Buddha taught. And so it's kind of compiled and condensed into the Dhammapada, into the 426 verses, right? And each chapter has a specific theme. So in this chapter, the theme is the mind. So all the verses in this chapter have to do with the mind, have to do with how the mind works, how the mind is guarded, how the mind is controlled, how we can use our mind, right? And so it has, to me, it's a beautiful summary of some of the most important teachings and practices in Buddhism. So that's also a really good starting point as well. But going back to the practice, we also have to know the intention behind your motivation to practice also, right? Because that's also important. Not all of our intentions are the same. Some of our intentions is because we want to simply just learn more and know more. Someone else's intention could be because they want to practice and be diligent in meditation. Somebody else may be practice because they want to be pretty versed in the Dharma or in the sutras, right? And so we all have different intentions of why we want to study or practice or be a Buddhist, right? But the Buddha warns us that we have to watch these intentions. Watch why we are here. Why do you come to the monastery? Why do you practice Buddhism? Why do you read? Why do you study? Why do you chant? Why do you meditate? What is the point, right? And so if your point is if you're meditating to ease anxiety or your stress or just be in a happier place, then you know what? Pop a pill. You don't need meditation for that, right? I mean, you can, but meditation, that's a byproduct of meditation, right? The ease of stress and anxiety and just freeing your mind, being more free, being able to watch your thoughts, watch your mind, control your mind. All these are byproducts that naturally happen with the progression of your meditation practice. But if that is the sole reason of why you want to meditate, you may not find very much success, right? Because the one thing in meditation is you can't go into meditation wanting a specific result. Because if you make the intention for a specific result, right, your mind's already figuring out what you're trying to do. And because you're not in control of your mind, you're not the master of your mind's going to try to demotivate you or try to skew your experience or what you're experiencing and what's going on. Because it doesn't want you to be stress-free. It doesn't want you to be, not anxious or depressed or whatever. It wants you to be those things because it can control you as long as you feel those things. And so when we're practicing meditation, right, we have to have a good enough intention to want to practice, at least specifically in Buddhism, right? If you're practicing Buddhist meditation specifically, the entire goal of Buddhist meditation is to develop and master concentration. Because with concentration comes wisdom, and when wisdom comes enlightenment. In that specific order. And if you cannot concentrate, if you cannot focus, if you can't be aware, if you can't be mindful while you're meditating, how do you expect to be mindful and concentrated when you're studying? How do you expect to be mindful and concentrated when you're trying to contemplate these teachings? Especially if you're trying to develop yourself, right? If you're trying to be a good practitioner or be a better person, we have to be able to actually apply those teachings into our life. We can't just read things and expect, oh yeah, I read it, now my mind's just going to automatically do it. No. If you decide you want to be a doctor, you just call yourself a doctor because in your mind you want to be a doctor? No, you have to go to school, you have to work for it, and you have to, put in the work. Right? Same thing if you go to a gym, you can't just go to a gym one time and work out and all of a sudden you're a bodybuilder. You can't sit down in meditation for 1 or 2 times and call yourself a meditation master. It doesn't work like that. And because there's work involved, right? And this is what demotivates a lot of people. At least in meditation. Because if you don't have the right intention, and you have an expectation of what you want to get out of meditation, like a calmer mind, stress-free, less anxious, etc., etc. If you have those expectations that I'm going to sit and I'm going to hope for the best that I'm less anxious and less stressed out by the time I get up in 15 minutes. If you have that expectation, it's never going to happen. Because your mind's working against you. It doesn't want you to be stress-free. It doesn't want you to be anxious because it can control you if you are stressed out and if you are anxious. Right? I always say that we're not the masters of our minds. If you're the masters of mind, you can control everything that you do, think and say. Can you do that? No. Can you shut off your mind? Can you stop thinking? Can you stop having intrusive thoughts, crazy thoughts, judgmental thoughts, biases, discriminations? Can you stop that at will? No. You can once you make the realization that's happening and you're thinking something bad or thinking something unwholesome or thinking something that's unproductive, right? If you catch yourself as it's happening, perfect. You're doing exactly what you need to do. But that can only happen after the thought has already started, after the thought has already formulated and initiated, right? And as long as that happens, we are not in control of our mind. We are aware, we're mindful, right? Because as those thoughts arise and we become mindful of them, we become aware that they've arisen and they're there. That's being mindful of the mind. But you're not controlled yet. It's not controlled yet. And so in the previous verses, right, the Buddha give us verses on being able to guard the mind. And once we're able to guard the mind, then we can control the mind. And to kind of reiterate a comment that came on last time, when we say controlling the mind, doesn't mean like a physical control, but more or less controlling the reaction that we have to things, right? Because we're very reactionary beings. We have this habit of reacting without thinking a lot of the time, right? Whether it's saying something or doing something that happens during, let's say, an argument, right? A lot of times when we're arguing with people, our mind isn't necessarily listening. We're not really actually listening to the person that's yelling at us. What we're doing is already trying to formulate a response in our mind to retaliate, right? We're not thinking of their suffering. We're not thinking of what they're going through. Or we're not thinking of why they're being the way that they are. We're not thinking about why they're saying the things that we're saying. We're not thinking that. We're already thinking that this person is annoying. They're yelling at me for no reason. How dare they? Who do they think they are? And we're already trying to come up with a comeback. Controlling the mind is being able to be aware of that thought process before it actually goes anywhere deeper or stronger. Controlling here means when someone's yelling at us, we're not reacting in a way that we're thinking of a response. Thinking of the response is not controlling the mind. What is controlling the mind is if someone's yelling at us, we simply just sit and listen. We have to acknowledge that this person's yelling at us because something happened to them, that they're suffering, and they're yelling at us because they think we're the problem or we're just an outlet for their venting. Be an outlet for someone's venting. They need it. Right? In my experience, if people are yelling or venting, it's because they need to. Let them do it. We already know that when we vent, when we yell, it kind of, sometimes it makes us feel better. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And so we have to acknowledge that there's no benefit in retaliating in a negative way back to them. There's no benefit in arguing back. There's no benefit in being unwholesome or negative toward this person. Because negativity isn't going to cancel out negativity. Evil won't cancel out evil, right? Only love and compassion can take away and subdue evil. And so this is what the end of the second verse says, right? He who has transcended both good and evil, for such a vigilant one, there is no fear. Why are we arguing in the first place? It's because we are in fear of our ego being hurt. Right? Which is the only reason why we retaliate, which is the only reason why we argue with people. It's because someone's insulting you, right? Your mind is in fear that, they're insulting my ego, they're insulting my person, my personality, they're insulting me. I must defend myself. I must defend this ego, this person, this me and I that I am. And so you retaliate, not because of anything that's beneficial, but because your ego's like, they said something nasty about you, let's say something nasty back, right? And once we're able to transcend that, right, and get out of the habit of seeing things in a dualistic view, good and evil, good, bad and wrong, bad and good, right and wrong, etc., etc. When we're able to escape that duality of seeing things like that, then we have no fear of trying to defend our ego, defend ourselves, defend this mind, me, that we think we have. I was telling someone the other day that, or they said something and they were profusely apologizing because they thought it was offensive. I'm like, it's not offensive. I'm unoffendable. Trust me. I don't care. And you become unoffendable when you're able to let go of these of thoughts of not allowing people's words to pull you back and forth, or people's actions or thoughts or opinions. Because that's the only reason why we suffer, is because we allow those things to influence us. We allow the things that people say to insult us, to hurt us, to make us feel bad or throw us on the bus, whatever it may be, right? We allow those things to affect us, which is the only reason why we suffer. If you didn't allow those things to affect you, if you didn't allow what they're saying to you to make you feel one way or the other, then there's no feeling to be sad about. Right? What's my magic recipe when someone's offended you? Is it true? Someone offends you. All you have to do is ask yourself, is it true? Yeah, it's true, they're saying to me. Okay, well, if it's true, you know it, they know it, why are you upset? Why are you offended? Someone offends you. Is it true? That's not true. Okay, you know it's true. They probably know it's not true. Why are you offended? It makes zero sense. And so every time you hear someone say, oh, that's offensive, or I'm like, to whom? Why? Get over it. What matter does it make whether it's offensive or not offensive? It's only offensive or not offensive if you take it to be offensive or not offensive. But again, when we're taking offense, it's because our ego is trying to defend itself. It all comes down to that. The self that we have, this ego that we have, this anatman, right? Non-self. And when you're able to see that this self that we call me and my and I and all that, when you're able to recognize that and transcend beyond that and know that you are nothing but skin and bones and organs and a mind, right? Which is why the meditation on the 32 parts of the body, meditation on the repulsiveness of the body, is to see exactly that. Externally, you may be very handsome or very beautiful, but imagine you got skinned. Are you still beautiful? Are you still handsome? If we take Miss America and Mr. America, I don't know, is there really such a thing? Right? Two supposedly beautiful people to win or whatever it is. If you skin them, right, or place them behind an x-ray, they're going to look exactly the same. They're both going to have skin and bones, they're both going to have organs, they're both going to have blood, nothing is different. So why should we react differently on an external surface? Why do we care about this mask that we wear? Why do you care about the clothes that we wear? Why do you care what your hair looks like, what you're wearing, how you're acting or reacting? What does it matter? What is it doing? Making you feel good? Good for you. In 20, 30, 50 years, you're not going to care what you look like. You'll be walking down to Walmart in a muumuu, right? You're not going to care what you're wearing, what you look like. Maybe. I don't know. People still wear muumuus. Why does time pass so fast when I'm talking? And so as we're practicing, right, this verse or this entire chapter is on the mind. And we already know that the practice of Buddhism is mind-centered, right? Everything comes from the mind. Nothing can escape the mind. Your enlightenment, your suffering, your happiness, your unhappiness, all this stems from the mind. And so if we're able to collect the mind and guard it, as we read through previous chapters, right, we have to have a guardian of this mind. This guardian is this security guard, right? So it's a security guard right at the mind level. So as your thoughts come and go, right, it has to pass through the security guard. And the security guard is there. If you're correctly guarding the mind, the security guard will be able to sift through the positive thoughts with the wholesome thoughts with the good thoughts, and sift through the bad thoughts, unwholesome thoughts, and negative thoughts. And allow what comes and what stays and what goes, right? So we have to hire this 24/7 security guy, man, person, being, thing in our mind to guard our thoughts. And once it's guarded, then it's able to better control, right? Remember, controlling here just means being able to correctly respond to and react to situations appropriately without any unwholesomeness or negativity towards yourself and to others. And when that mind is guarded and controlled, then the mind is able to be subdued and freed from the bond of Mara, as we went through last week. And once it's subdued and freed from the bond of Mara, if we truly practice the Dharma, then we become peaceful in the mind, and our wisdom will be perfected. And once our mind is peaceful and perfected, then any thoughts that arise, any defilements, any of the fetters, whether good or bad, we will not be able to fear those. So the point is, watch what you're thinking about. If you're able to watch what you think, then you're able to watch what you say. If you're able to watch what you say, then you're able to watch what you do. If you're able to watch what you do, then you can do some amazing or terrible things. Hopefully amazing. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. Yes.
I was just going to say, your description of living in security guard and the idea of the ego and superego, I just think it's very similar to that. Is there any correlation with these two?
Could be. Again, it's all mind-related, right? And there's the forms and levels of the id and the ego and the personalities and whatnot, right? But it all comes from the same place. We just give it different names to be able to distinguish this from that. But at the end of the road, it's still the mind. Don't think about it too much, otherwise it's going to hurt. Simple is best. Simplicity is bliss. For the most part. Any other questions, concerns? Yes.
Okay. So, with the goal of happiness, less anxiety, being misguided, what's like a good way to put what the goal should be? General alleviation of suffering in the world? No.
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
If it's kind of misguided, say, I'm going to try a new spiritual practice to seek happiness and less pain. What's the more well-guided say for what the purpose is?
The purpose is to be happy, but that's the byproduct of the practice, right? Because you can't practice something and be happy from the practice itself. The happiness comes when the practice itself lessens what's causing you unhappiness, right? Because there's a story when there's a disciple that went to the Buddha and asked him about meditation. And he told the Buddha that I wanted to meditate to be happy, to be free of anxiety, to be free of stress, blah, 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 right? I want happiness. I want wealth and fame, blah, 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 right? The Buddha told him that meditation won't give you those things, but meditation will lessen your natural reaction to negative things. It will lessen your ability to have or need expectations, and it will lessen your suffering. And as those negativities, as those sufferings lessen and disappear, your happiness will naturally arise and become there, right? And so the practice isn't to make you happy, but it's to allow you to see what is making you unhappy, to eradicate that from your life, right? Because you're unhappy, you can't say you're happy because you have things in the life that's making you unhappy. It's the things that are making you unhappy that you feel like your happiness isn't there. And so it's not to try to accumulate more happiness to override the unhappiness, but it's to get rid of the unhappiness so that the happiness will naturally just be in its place, right? And so people often think that Buddhism is so pessimistic, because we're always talking about suffering. Suffering this, suffering that. Well, it's not, our life story is full of suffering, but it's not to say that life is suffering, but that in life there is suffering. Life itself is not suffering, but the things within our life, the things that we're unable to control, the things that we are using incorrectly is what's making us unhappy. Life itself cannot make you unhappy. Life is a beautiful, glorious thing. But it's the pieces in our life that make us unhappy. Something happened that made us unhappy. Something hurt us. Something defiled us. Something this, something that, right? It's the some things that make you unhappy, not life itself. Life itself cannot do anything for you except be there. Likewise, you can't do anything for life except be there too. What you can do is to regulate the mind, guard the mind, and control the mind so that when something negative happens, or that something that is unwholesome, unhappy that does arise, are able to see it for what it is, as it is, when it's happening, and do something about it. Right? This goes back to the why meditation. If you meditate on why, on whatever topic that makes you suffer or unhappy, ask yourself why. Give yourself an answer. Then re-ask the question why for that answer. Get another answer, why? Get another answer, why? You keep asking yourself, why, until you get to the very core reason. Because you can't just be unhappy out of nowhere. I'm unhappy. Why? I don't really know. You do know, you just want to admit it. So we go into meditation to find that admission, and once we actually are able to admit it to ourselves, because a lot of times, especially if it stems from trauma, where we avoid it and kind of push it back so it doesn't resurface, it's the wrong thing to do. But if we ask ourselves why and get to that core reason, get to the very tip of what is causing all this suffering, now we have something tangible. Now you have something that you can do. So if it's a person, for instance, then you can either distance yourself from them, you can unfriend them, you can change your relationship that you have with them, whatever it may be, right? You will know what needs to be, you will know what needs to be done. And once you eradicate that one flaw or that one suffering, now you have one less suffering in your life. You may have 5,000 million other ones, but it's still one less, right? And you continue that process until those sufferings lessen and lessen, and eventually you have nothing to suffer about. The happiness that is intrinsically within us will resurface. We are all Buddhas. We're all Bodhisattvas. We just don't see it because our mind is too dirty. It's too defiled, right? It is not pure enough to surpass those defilements for us in order to become enlightened, right? Think of a mirror. Think of a hot mirror after you get out of the shower. It's all steamy, right? You can't really see your reflection. You can't see your true self. And so you may use a wet towel to try to get rid of the steam, but now it's streaky and there's little clumps of lint, right? It's kind of clean, but it's not really clean, so then use your hand. Well, now you got rid of all the lint, but now it's still streaky. Then use another dry towel, and you're using different tools to see yourself more clearly. Likewise, we use our practice to do exactly that. We use the different tools. We chant, that's a tool. We meditate, that's a tool. We read and study and we contemplate, those are tools. So the more you use your tools correctly to assuage all that suffering that's going on, the easier it will be for them to naturally just disappear. And for the happiness that's intrinsically within you will arise. It's there. It's always there. We're not born depressed, right? We become depressed because of our environment, because of our society or culture or relationships or whatever it may be, right? We become things. And so we have to essentially eradicate those becomings so that our true self will arise. That's a lot of words, I'm sorry. Hopefully that made sense. When I was reading or rereading the story for these verses, and when it clicked that the story was the story about being able to ordain 7 times, reminded me of a lot of people that I personally know that have disrobed themselves as monks. It's very rare that I've seen nuns disrobe, but I've seen several monks disrobe, because just like Siddhartha, who disrobed because he allowed his sensual attachments to take over, right? Because he had a wife and he was just missing sensuality in general. This is often the reason why a lot of people disrobe. And it's the last time I was in California, many years ago, I took full ordination. There was a monk, an older monk, that was also ordaining with me, and this was his 3rd time ordaining, because he disrobed and ordained, now he's ordaining again. So nonchalantly, I was like, why were you disrobing in the first place? And you came back. And he basically had a lot of the same feelings that a lot of newly ordained people have, which is, I missed my old life. I thought I could do this. I thought I would be at more peace. I thought I would have more time, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, so did I, but I didn't disrobe. Right? I thought, as a monk, I would have so much more time to study that I would be enlightened in like 5 years. I have less time now as a monk than I did when I wasn't a monk to study. I work more now than I ever did before, right? And so, when we still get, all those thoughts of, discontentness with life. It's not always easy living a monastic life. There's plenty of sacrifices we do to have this kind of lifestyle, but just like with our own practice, where you have to guard and control your mind externally, we too have to do the same thing. So we really have to be able to figure out, what is your intention for all this? What is your intention to come to the temple? What is your intention to be here and practicing with us? What is your intention to chant and to meditate and be part of this community? What is your intention? If your intention is just to hang out with a bunch of cool people, I think we're all cool people, and be away, be somewhere peaceful for once a week, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But you won't ever be able to transcend suffering if that's just wanting to be away somewhere for an hour or two, right? So intention in Buddhism is extremely important. And I mentioned this last week when we were talking about the precepts, right? When you take your precepts, the precepts are only broken, right? There's only a true breakage if the intention was there to break them in the first place, right? I mentioned, like, if you're just walking to the temple from your car, you've probably stepped over a couple of bugs or ants, right? You unintentionally taken life, which is the first precept, abstain from taking life. But you've taken life just walking to the temple. But you did not have an intention to kill these innocent animals, beings, insects. But it happened, right? But if you have the intention to go out and specifically look for something to kill or to step on or to drive over something, then that's obviously a whole different story, right? So that same type of intention has to be within your practice. What do you want to do? And I mentioned, I think, last meditation class, like, even when you sit for meditation, you have to have an intention of why you're sitting for meditation. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Right now we're talking about the jhana factors and trying to reach access concentration, right? This access concentration is the mindset or state that you want to be in for a real meditation, right? But getting there is not easy. But you have to have the intention and make yourself this kind of promise that you will overcome the obstacles that will arise during meditation, which are the 5 hindrances, right? These obstacles and hindrances will arise whether you like it or not. And when they arise, because they will arise very often for the unpracticed, that's usually enough motivation for them to quit meditation all the time, altogether. Because they're thinking, I just can't do this. My mind's always thinking, it's always distracted. I can't calm my mind, I can't stop my mind, I can't stop thinking, right? So they discourage themselves out of practice, when all you really need is just a disciplined practice. If you discipline yourself and you give yourself the 10, 15, 20 minutes a day consistently, you will 100% see results. I guarantee you. But if you're only meditating once a week or every other day or whenever you feel like it, you're not going to get the same results. If you do that, it'll take you 10 years what someone else can do in 1 year. Right? The third type of meditation is absorption concentration, or accessing the jhanas. These are the high levels of meditation, the high levels of consciousness. Being real on a topic, will be probably impossible for a undisciplined meditator to achieve. Impossible. You can think and want it all you want, but it's not going to happen. Because you're not disciplined enough to sit 3 hours a day every day to meditate, to achieve it. Because that's the minimum requirement. Right? But we can achieve the second, which is access concentration. Right? This is our goal during our meditations here. But even that in order to achieve access concentration, you also need to achieve the 5 jhana factors. Right? And so there's lists within lists within lists that we have to achieve in order to get and see and realize the big picture. Okay, I'm actually going to stop talking now. Any last minute short questions before we go to chanting? The speaker meditation, as a reminder, our retreat will be on the 9th of December. You can register on our website. It'll be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. This will be a meditation, our annual meditation retreat, winter retreat. I don't know why I call it winter retreat. Texas doesn't have a winter. It has like a huff of winter, right? It's a quick, that's it. But that's coming up. So I hope I will see everyone there. If there are more questions, then we will transfer the merit and go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Body, speech, and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space, and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our whole heart, mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripen. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. The incense in the censer now is burning. All the Dharma realm in every place auspicious clouds appear. Our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body, homage to the incense cloud canopy bodhisattva and great bodhisattvas. Homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha Maitreya, honored future Buddha Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth sword, great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea like Bodhisattvas. Please sit down. Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Ratnatrayaya, Namo Haryavalokiteshvara, Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Om Sarvaravaye, Sodanadasya, Namaskritva Imamarya, Valokiteshvara Ramdava, Namo Narayana, Sarvaharhato Shobham Ajiyam, Sarvasadva Namo
Ashina Asham Rashari Vishva Vishvam Rashaya Holo Holo Mara Holo Holo Re Sara Sara Siri Siri Soro Soro Bodhiya Bodhiya Bodhaya Bodhaya Maitreya Narakindin Rishaninam Mana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Maha Siddhaya Swaha Siddha Yogeshwaraya Swaha Narakin Swaha Mara Nara Swaha Sira Simha Mokaya Swaha Sarva Maha Siddhaya Swaha Chakra Siddhaya Swaha Padma Kasaya Swaha Narakindi Vagalaya Swaha Mavari Sankaraya Swaha Namo Ratna Trayaya Namo Arya Valokite Shvaraya Swaha Om Siddhyanto Mantra Padaya Swaha. The Dharma body is bringing morning light and concentration. Heart is at peace, a half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day and I vow to go through it. The sun of wisdom has risen. Every direction, noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of ye. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere, as my own person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Offering light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened and One to whom we bow in gratitude. Cutting through ignorance, awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude. Working mindfully, working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Samanta Bhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude. Responding to suffering, serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude. Seed of awakening and loving kindness in children, sprouts in all beings, Maitreya, the Buddha to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude. Showing the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachings, bow in gratitude. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see it and practice. We vow to realize its true meaning. The Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the discourse of Prajna Paramita, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is empty. Emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than. Same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, no perceptions nor mental formation, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattva's ground in Prajna Paramita find no obstacle, for their minds having no obstacles, they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. For one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth. The mantra of Prajna Paramita should therefore be Gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha gate para samgate bodhi swaha para samgate bodhi swaha. We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen. In order to understand, we invoke your name. In order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness, we will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen and understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear the other person is saying, and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffer in the other person. We invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention. Open-heartedness, we will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or react deeply, so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species. We invoke your name, Samanta Bhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and heart of compassion, to bring joy to one person the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we aspire to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to us. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved all species. We invoke your name, Kshitigarbha. We aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so we can bring light, hope, relief, inspiration to those places. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate situations. We will do our best to establish contact with those who way out of their suffering, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that hell can be found in many places. We will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will practice to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need. I take refuge in Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty. In the dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light thus supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha in myself, I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma in myself. I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha in myself. I aspire to help all people, fourfold communities, to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Also, a quick reminder: this coming Saturday is our last meditation class before our retreat. Right, this Saturday. I'm pretty sure this Saturday is our last class. So, this Saturday will be our last class at 10 a.m. For our meditation class, and then we will have a retreat, and we'll take a break until the classes will resume after the Lunar New Year. Thank you. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.